Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in Venice, California. This is a Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael, and today we are so excited to have back on this show Marnie Olson and Carolyn Marshall of Cosmic Playhouse. And we're going to be talking, or they're going to be talking, about Election Day astrology, which looks really dramatic and interesting. But before we get started, Michael has a few announcements.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our show. It's really great to have you here. And we always look forward to it. It's a lot of fun, and we're just getting ready to wrap up our fourth season. So we only have a couple episodes left this year. We're taking a little break in December. So join us for the last couple episodes, and then we'll see you again in the new year. We've got a great guest coming up next week. It's Master Chaos, who is the host of Master Chaos TV, and he's a paranormal investigator and film buff and so forth. We'll be talking about maybe some of his most favorite supernatural films and things of that nature, and all things that go bump in the night. So join us for that. And you know, the best thing you can do to help our show is two things. You know, click like and subscribe. That really makes a difference. And of course, tell your friends. We really appreciate that when you do it. Get all the information on our website, sixthsensesociety.com, SAXTH, all spelled out. And if you can afford to, buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi. Helps cover a little bit of our cost. But we love doing the show, and we're going to continue to do it because we're having a blast and meeting great people, and it's just a lot of fun. So I don't want to take up too much time today because I know it's an important day with Election Day and eclipses and everything else. So I'm going to kick it back to you guys. So take it away, Krista.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. And welcome, Marnie.
Hi. How's it going?
It's going. and Caroline.
Howdy out there.
So I'm very excited to have you doing, this is the first time we've done a show like this, an Election Day astrology show. So I'm very excited, and we're doing it on Election Day, of course, but it is a dramatic day, isn't it?
It's a very dramatic day because there is a full moon, an eclipse, and as we were discussing, don't think there's been an eclipse exactly on Election Day, maybe ever. So yeah, today's looking pretty dramatic. We've been talking about it for a long time, like what is this going to look like? So we actually did look at the chart for the eclipse, which the exact time of the eclipse was 6:02 a.m. And so at that moment we have of course, a full moon. So you got the sun at 16 Scorpio and the moon at 16 Taurus. We've also got Mercury at 15 degrees Scorpio. Saturn's at 18 degrees Aquarius. Uranus is at 16 degrees Taurus. So there's a ton of activity that's also setting off that eclipse. That's a lot of the big boys are in there. And so it is looking pretty dramatic. Just quickly glancing at it, I was thinking with this, the Uranus and the Mercury conjuncting and squaring, that you got to kind of ride the roller coaster a little bit and not get caught up in any little moment, because Uranus is constant shifts and changes. Mercury is, of course, shifts too. It's very mercurial. It can change on a dime. So, the best thing I can say overall is try not to panic, because if you just give it 30 seconds, it might look completely different. So I'm sure that it's going to be, probably with that Mercury too, it's going to be a chaotic news day. So buckle up.
And
that.
It's opposing Uranus.
Yeah. So, I think that's going to be pretty intense. So that would be what I would say overall, looking at the chart. The chart itself also has Scorpio rising. And so all of that activity, the Mercury, Sun, Venus is all up against that ascendant. And then the North Node, the Moon, and Uranus are all on the seventh house axis. So there's a lot of this, I think, conflict between, and I think that's politically what we're looking at, a lot of that conflict between individual freedom versus social, more of a social connection, or thinking of the other which I think we sometimes get caught up in a lot. That's just what I would say overall. We got Saturn at the bottom of the chart, and of course Saturn and Uranus doing another, they're in close. We're still doing that Saturn and Uranus square off that's been going, on and off for years now.
Now, one of the things I've heard with eclipses is they, in classical astrology, they affect leaders more. Is that true? Like they can have more of a, at least classically, effect upon certain leadership or leaders in terms of power and taking down power. And I didn't look up Biden's exact sun sign, but he is a Scorpio.
Oh, don't get me started.
He is a Scorpio.
Yes, he's a Scorpio.
We have his chart here somewhere.
Oh, good.
Actually, the eclipse, the old, back in the old days, the lore is that symbolically on an eclipse, that the king, and I don't know where this is just one of those astrological lore stories. So you might want to fact check this, but it really can't be fact checked because it's war. But the king, on the eclipse, they would often, if they knew there was eclipse coming, and I think this might be in England, if I'm not wrong, the king would be taken out, and they would have someone dressing up as the king on the eclipse.
Like a stand-in.
Have you heard that?
Yeah, I heard that too. The stand-in for authority.
So for the authority, so that when the terrible thing happened, because it's symbolically, because it's the sun, it's the ruler, and it's a terrible, gets eclipsed by the moon, eclipses it, that it's a, I mean, that might be a solar eclipse, but I think it bears with that lunar eclipse too. So there's that sort of theatrics of having the fake imposter king, right? Which I thought was kind of, and someone else was talking about this too, about what happened in England with the strange, like Liz Truss, when she came in, she came in, and it was almost like she came in and then was taken out.
Right.
Like,
and they had her up against, in a weird, they had her up against like the head of lettuce to see who would last longer. And this head of lettuce sort of became symbolic of the leader that actually held on longer or something. It was very strange.
Right. I thought that was interesting. Someone was talking about that. That symbolically that kind of is.
Right. And eclipses are all about obscuring,
Well, and also the kings must die on the eclipse. It's a very dramatic, historically speaking, and that they, because it was terrifying, and that they didn't know what was going on, and so I think that the fact that we're electing leaders on this day is very, it's very symbolically fascinating, actually. Right. Yeah, so Biden is a Scorpio. He's got a lot of Scorpio, and so the Scorpio-Taurus axis right now, the moon is in Taurus, the sun is in Scorpio. Biden is a Scorpio with moon in Taurus. So, and so...
I forgot he had moon in Taurus.
Yeah, and so a lot of astrologers are like, well, it depends on who's reading the astrology, but Jupiter is trining all of his, Scorpio, but Saturn is squaring all of his, Scorpio and his Taurus, and so his chart, but he's a Scorpio. They kind of live in that. This is sort of the dark realm, he's he has dark Brandon after all.
They can withstand a lot of tension.
And they kind of live internally in that. It doesn't look like it, but so it's interesting to how that astrology for that him will hold up, because it is getting a lot of stress on his chart today,
right?
Like a lot, and then he's going to have Saturn squaring all of his Scorpio. Because it's later degrees, not all of it. But when Saturn starts squaring it at the end of the year, like next month, in January, there's going to put a lot of pressure on his sun. But then his moon is at 0 degrees Taurus. And Pluto is going into Aquarius, and it's going to exactly square it. And that scares me. Right. I mean, not to be alarming, but I think that when Pluto hits your moon, it's especially because his is in the 6th house. That could be some...
Yeah, because I told you I was listening to the Astrology podcast with Chris Brennan this morning, and they were talking about that 6th house stuff getting hit, and like how so many people are like, oh, it's his health, it's his health, it's his health, and everyone's freaked out about that. But they brought up a really good point, which is that the 6th house is also, it's the work, and it's like, it's kind of like it's your cabinet, it's your staff, it's your employees, it's everyone around you. And so much of what he's up against is like, who is he going to have to be working with, and how much tension is going to be there. And that's what we're looking at. Is the House going to flip? Is the Senate going to flip? Or is he going to be, with all this, is he going to be surrounded by more opposition?
Well, yes, and remember, the moon, his moon is the thing that's going to be squared by Pluto. Moon, symbolically, is your house.
Yeah.
When I was looking at it, I was like, oh my God, his house is going to
literally
change.
the house.
So if I'm predicting this as a predictive astrologer, I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. His whole house is going to be Pluto square the moon. But that's a tremendous, that's such tremendous feelings of loss. So, that worried me as far as, predicting, so I put, Biden away because that's a special case. As far as predicting, the outcome of, what's going to happen in January.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the square aspect, because people throw that out a lot, and it seems to me there's different kinds of squares. I can't remember waxing, waning, but this is more of my experience of squares recently, is that they can make things really creative. But I think it depends on if it's waxing or waning. That if you think of a square, you're building a square, right? But you don't have the other sides. And I think it also depends. I mean, obviously, if it's square in your moon, some people think the moon is the body too. There's a whole argument about that in astrology that could affect his health for sure. And he's older.
Absolutely.
But the idea of the square, I've thought a lot about when I've had them, and that there is this incredible energy that you're pressured to use, and it seems like you can sometimes break through some things as a result, and it doesn't have to necessarily just be unpleasant or difficult. And the trines for me kind of make me lazy. Like I mean, that's just me. I'm like, this is, so I don't know. It's just, I watch how things affect me a lot. And I think that there seems to be different kinds of ways squares impact people. And that idea of it being I know that you can't see it coming sometimes, what it is, the issue. I think that's true. But it seems like you just start using the energy differently.
Right, with the transit.
A square transit.
Yeah, and the square is more dynamic. So what happens is it pushes for so much growth. Now, when you have a trine, things are kind of groovy, and cool. Right. So there's not really that internal tension, which brings growth and change. That's where the squares are. So squares aren't good or bad, or
It's just it's building this tension. It's building this angle that sort of forces you into action.
Yeah, and it brings growth, and it can be extremely creative. And matter of fact, people who are born with, I was born with a lot of squares. I have a grand fixed cross. Not that is me, but there are a lot. The really people who bring in their own. Like for instance, Gandhi had, his chart was just wretched as far as he was, 15 crosses in his chart, but he used his will, to, his will that has been, forged into all this internal tension and suffering to kind of change the world. I mean, you can say what you want about Gandhi.
Yeah, we
whatever.
Go off for a while, but
I don't want to go there. But I'm saying, so I know that people were born with a lot of trines, because you always think, oh, you're so lucky, but they just,
they can kind of coast a little bit.
They coast a lot, and that's awesome. And maybe it's their lifetime.
And those of us who are all racked with all the crosses are looking at them like, why are you just coasting?
And they're just coasting, and they're chill, and it's all good.
Good point.
Right, and there's not a lot of all of that internal, pressure to. Those voices and all of that drives people to create, to make changes, to grow. But when you take somebody that as like Biden's his elderly age, you take that into consideration. But also, when you have a Scorpio with a lot of planets in Scorpio, they're kind of like I said, they've got all this internal darkness anyway.
Right.
They're used to the death idea.
Oh, yeah. And it's kind of like I always say, they're always like, Brer Rabbit. You throw them into the Brer Patch.
And they're like, this is great.
Yeah.
I like thorns.
Yeah.
I'm into the fiery hell pit.
It's kind of their element. Because I remember last year when we had the Scorpio-Taurus eclipse last year, the last one we had, it was like, that's when, I don't know, they passed the big bills and all of this stuff. And it was right on Biden's ascendant and
Interesting.
son. It was.
Wow.
And I was thinking, there you go. Oh, Biden's in the prayer plant. And people get him on because they see that Sag rising. He just seems like kind of a goofy old guy.
Right. He's like, you know, and
he's presenting with a Sagittarius, you know. So, you know, the good old Uncle Joe.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's not. There's a lot of time. And it's really funny when they started calling him Dark Brandon.
Right.
Because I thought, Scorpio's starting to rise up.
Yeah.
You know, it is rising up. He's starting to
and
show that.
Sometimes that's the last thing a Scorpion does before
that stinger.
The last thing they do is sting. That's their last move. So I would say, you know, don't mess with them too much.
That's good, Marnie. Marnie always has, you have this thing about Scorpios. Eventually, even the sweet ones.
Eventually. I don't care if they have Sag rising and they seem like your best friend. Sooner or later, you're going to get it.
You're going to get stung eventually by that. So it's interesting. And now that the Scorpion, you know, he's getting backed up against the wall, like they're coming after him.
Right, and that's when they're meanest. So don't back a Scorpio into a corner ever.
And they're darkest. So but in a way, like I said, he's kind of Scorpios do that. They're kind of in their element when things get dark and, you know, tense. And that's what I'm saying. So that's why this is so interesting as far as trying to game it out, because I've been trying to game this out for like 2 years now, like what's going to happen in 2024 and 2023. So but we did do an inauguration, because this is what we've been looking at, the aspects, all the astrologers are, because it is the election of trying to game out how's this going to go, right? And it's because it's so insane, you know, it's an eclipse, it's conjunct Uranus, squaring Saturn, and Mercury's, you know, and Cazimi, all this stuff. I look to the inauguration day of the new house, and, you know, because that will tell you a lot more about the new administration starting in 2020. So that is we're in a whole different place by then. Yeah, I know. The energy is so much different. So, there's a lot going on there, because we did that too for trying to game out 2024. We looked to the inauguration day, and it gives you a lot clearer. And I did it too with 2020. So what I'm saying is, instead of looking on the election day and trying to figure out how it comes out, you know, by predictive astrology, look to the beginning of the administration in January. I think it's January 3rd.
January 3rd, yeah. I mean, I did the chart for noon, because that's, I think, the official when they swear in the new.
Right.
So what's going on then?
Well, we have. I hate the way they do this.
We'll have, let's see, sun. So obviously the sun will be in Capricorn. We're going to have a Gemini moon at 7 degrees. Mercury in Capricorn at 21. Pluto's still going to be in Capricorn. That's like 27. Jupiter's at 1 degree Aries. Mars at 8 degrees Gemini. So we've got a Mars. Mars is going to be right on that moon. There's going to be a Mars-moon conjunction.
That's nice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so...
that's nice.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of... I don't know, that seems like a clearer vision to me. Saturn at 22 Aquarius. Still have Saturn in Aquarius. So
Uranus is going to be trining the sun. You got Uranus and Taurus trining the sun in Capricorn.
Yeah, and that looks much better for economically speaking, right? So, and actually, I didn't go over that a lot today before we came.
This is literally the first time I'm looking at it, because I just printed it out and I was like, I'm going to pull something out of my butt for that.
That's Uranus.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so everybody really wanted to know. Everyone is like, well, what is your prediction? And every astrologer that I'm watching on YouTube and everywhere is going, nope, not doing it this time. No prediction, because of the Uranus aspect. In astrological terms, Uranus means unpredictable. Yeah. So you're saying, okay, you want me to predict the unpredictable. So then you try gaming it out. Like, okay, well, what if I predict the opposite of what looks like it's going to happen? Then once you start predicting it, it's supposed to be unpredictable. So it's really a very, very shady.
It's the thing when you try to figure out, like, okay, it's Uranus, so it's going to be the thing I least expect.
Right.
So anything I can think of is already not going to be it.
Right. So it's It's very tricky. And Mercury, and a lot of people aren't talking a lot about Mercury. Mercury is all over the place in this eclipse. And it starts out It starts out because it's a Kazemi, so it's going to be, and it's really interesting. Actually, there's three.
So tell people what a Kazemi is. Not everybody knows.
Yeah, I'm sorry. A Kazemi is conjunction of a planet with the sun, a superior conjunction. Like, okay, so but what's interesting about this is Mercury is in Scorpio, right? And the sun is in Scorpio. So, they're conjunct. That's what they call conjunct. But with this Mercury, my understanding, and my science might be a little fuzzy here, my astronomy, but Mercury is going to be, it's going to go from, I believe, the night sky to the morning sky. So in other words, it's going to disappear behind the sun, and Uranus is going to be also eclipsed by the sun and the moon, right? Now, something like that, okay? So in other words, it's actually, it's the occultation of Uranus today. It's so crazy. So Uranus is getting, occulted, eclipsed basically by the moon, and
Mercury by the sun.
Mercury's getting eclipsed by the sun. I hope I haven't lost anybody here. It's kind of,
I'm only following it because I'm like looking at the numbers.
Okay. So here we are. We're in between all of this, right? Here we have Uranus over here, and here we have Mercury over here. So that's why. But that's so crazy. So what this, to put it on in theatrical terms, Mercury and Uranus are going backstage. Right. They're hiding. But when Mercury in Scorpio and Uranus in Taurus, when those two go at each other, it's crazy town, because Mercury is the trickster, first of all, and Mercury is in Scorpio, and it's got lots of secrets, and it's hiding backstage. And they call it the throne of royalty, by the way.
It reminds me of those the cartoon fights where you have the animals and then they just have like the obscure cloud and you see a leg stick out and then another leg stick out. And you're like, oh, the cat's winning. Oh no, the rat's winning. Oh no, the cat's winning. And it's like you don't, and you're like, you just have to wait for the dust to settle, because somebody's going to end up bloody on the floor. Maybe both, maybe what, you don't know. But it's like you keep trying to figure it out and you can't. Because it's just like...
Right. That's very good, Marnie. Yeah. That's sort of, yeah. So we also have Venus. Venus is in exile. She's in her detriment right now. She's in Scorpio. She does not like being in Scorpio, and she's also in the underworld with hanging out with Pluto. And she's
hanging out with her rapist, so she's not happy.
Well, yeah, that's
Pluto.
It's true. And she's in the underworld with Pluto. The myth of Persephone going down. Right. That's the myth of Venus when she goes into
the underworld.
She's not retrograde, but she's in the underworld. She's going between the morning sky and the night sky. But anyway, so you get the symbolism of her. She's hiding out backstage too, but she's busy getting betrayed and raped or whatever. Sorry, that's a little cavalier.
It's a little dark, but
a little dark.
Well, I would disagree a little bit, because Venus and Scorpio may have overcome that. Because Venus and the story of Persephone, no one talks about when she becomes the queen.
Well, yeah, she comes
and what happens when she embraces that part, because obviously that's a huge part of the myth. We're all initially drawn into the abduction part. And Venus in Scorpio, my understanding, is more of that lusty, dark side of Venus, and Venus in Libra is more of the fine, refined energy. And I forget, there's like a name for each of the Venuses that Aaron Sullivan talks about it. And that we have to learn to embrace both sides of Venus in ourselves, which I thought was really fascinating. That lusty, sexual Venus, and the one that loves people and has refinement and beauty and to me it's like the integration. But
well, there's the Earth Venus and Sky Venus. Venus rules Taurus, which is the Earth, and Venus rules Libra, which is the sky, and that's the two natures. And also she's when she's in the morning sky, she's the warrior goddess. When she's in the evening sky, she's the love goddess. Love goddess. People always forget about her being a warrior goddess. So,
that's a really good point.
Yeah, and she's down there with Pluto right now. And the thing is, the reason I'm saying she's with Pluto is because she's going to sextile Pluto really soon in a couple of days, which I thought was really interesting. Because I'm like, close. Venus and Pluto are they're in cahoots. What are they up to? But they're in the underworld. So so there's all this backstage drama going on. What we're seeing on stage is all carefully curated, right? This is, the playwrights have it all set up, but there's, like somebody said, everyone's battling backstage. It's like maybe they're just finding out who's going to go on, or whatever. That's my scene.
It reminds me when you're talking about what Michael Moore said about the voter turnout, that the polls are wrong.
It's all theatrics.
And he was right about Trump. and that he thought, and I thought, well, that's a very appropriate thing to think, is that the polls are off today or before, like that we're not even getting proper polls and voter turnout. And then you reminded me of all this, like maybe there's more going on behind the scenes, that we're in different states and different places, that the dark side of people that's rising, like all the women being still. Someone said, oh, the Roe versus Wade thing should have happened right before the election. I said, do you think women have forgotten about that? Are you insane?
Like, no one's forgotten.
That brings me up. Can we pick? Okay.
Yeah, we can go there.
We've got our little astrological Jeopardy here going on.
So pick a card, any card.
Yeah, that one right there.
Remember the 8th of November.
Remember the 8th of November. I don't think you can read that.
I can read tarot. I
know you can, but you can try to read it and figure out what I meant. But those were notes for me. But.
Venus trine to Neptune North. I don't know. And Pallas Athena and Black Moon Lilith. Right. Oh, this was that trine you wanted to talk about.
Yes, this is the trine too. So this is why, I'm calling this Remember the 8th of November. Because, come on. This is, like you said, that's why when I was trying to figure out what the symbols were today, because there's so many of them. You must forgive us for going all over the place, but there's a lot. So, but Uranus is in Taurus, right? And it's conjuncting the moon and the North Node. Right. Now, Taurus is ruled by Venus, right? Which rules like the economy and wealth and money and finances and stuff like that. So you're like, oh, well, that's what people are caring about, I guess. But then it's like Venus is coloring all of this, right? And the moon. And so it's going to go, the energy is going to go with the moon Uranus, North Node. And being in Taurus, ruled by Venus. And then we have the Neptune, Black Moon, Lilith, what a conjunction. And that's all women's issues. So that's why I was calling it, it is November. I do think the women have been, and because Venus is hiding symbolically, like she's out of the picture, everybody's over here, blah, blah, blah. And it's like you said, forget about the women. Oh, the women are over it. They're just thinking about how much gas is.
Ago.
Yeah, they can't keep all of that in their little heads. It's like no. Do not discount women, and that's it's so condescending to me when I hear that. It's like, well, all the women really care about is the price of bread and gasoline, and it's like they've forgotten all about that. That was so long ago.
I haven't forgotten that. It's also it's that thing where when I did turn on the news today, and it was a huge mistake because I was watching them, like everyone that was on the scene, they were intentionally amplifying all these voices of people like, well, I voted Republican straight down the ticket. I just care about crime. It's just like they were intentionally amplifying certain voices after saying, they'd be like, oh no, I've interviewed all these people who are voting Republican. I interviewed all these people voting Democrat. This is who I interviewed. And then you're only going to show us the clips of the Republicans because I feel like you're trying to rile up a certain, you're trying to rile people up in a certain direction. Right. And it's like, so we have to that's why I say be careful about listening to what's being amplified and just
that
chill.
Brings us to the throne of reality. I keep saying the throne of reality. The throne of royality. That's what astrology.
Royality. I like that.
I get that right.
Royal reality.
Royal reality. Hey, it's hard for me. The throne of royalty. Royalty.
You keep trying to put reality in there.
I know I do. Reality I do want to make it reality. Anyway, yeah. So who sits in the throne of royalty today, right? Symbolically, it is Mercury. Mercury is, with the sun.
Right.
The ruler, God, whatever. And Mercury is the messenger. That's the news. That's the shit they're telling us.
Right.
And the story, the story.
And everything going through on social media. And you have the news.
And then we have Mars, beautiful Mars, in Gemini, squaring Neptune and Jupiter. It's like, this is all a delusion. It's
right.
all
And Mars is in retrograde, so it's like there's so much tension below the surface too, and on top of everything else.
Right, but the theatrics and the deception and the delusions and everyone's getting caught up with it. It's all just this, it's all like we're just being hypnotized by this ridiculous. Well, it's very emotional. Yeah. It's extremely emotional. We're all being emotionally manipulated in so many ways. So that is all over the chart. And I wrote down here Sag Gemini full moon because in December, on December 6th or 7th.
I think it's the 7th, yeah.
We have a Sagittarius full moon. And Sagittarius symbolizes oftentimes the truth. It's the truth, and it's just, straight up, no bullshit. It can
be very blunt. It's very... Whereas, of course, bullshit. It's a full moon, so then you're going to have the opposition with Gemini, which is frequently a little bit... less known for the truth and more known for deception.
So, but what happens is the day before that, Jupiter goes direct. So that's why this whole, what I'm trying to, piece together here is we're not going to see anything. It's going to be chaos for the next, because Mercury and Uranus, and they're not going to be counting the votes. It's all going to be just theatrics and shows, and that leads us to this card here,
the Red Mirage.
I do think it's not going to be a red wave. Well, it might be a red wave, but it's going to be a red mirage. And because, now check this out, you might like this one, because the red planet Mars is at 25 degrees, and it's in Gemini, and retrograde squaring Saturn, Jupiter, and Neptune. And Neptune, that's the big lie, right?
Right.
The big delusion, and Jupiter's makes it bigger and more glaring. So it's all, and the Mars is a red planet, and it's just like, it's all an illusion. It's all been an illusion, and we're all getting set up.
That's well, you've also got the weapons of mass delusion, which is that.
Oh
Mars
that one's a good one. That's actually a book that just came out. I stole that.
I'm sort of fascinated with Mars right now because it's going over my moon, and I've been dealing with that. Thinking about that square to Neptune, and I think I talked about it before, there is this spiritual help that is available, though.
That's good.
That is different than I've ever experienced, where if you really maybe double up on whatever spiritual practices you do, because of that square, Neptune can have a positive effect, but it's definitely bringing, I think, more delusion with actions and ideas. You're not sure what is what, with the Mars and Gemini. I think it's those two together that's causing more, because Mars in itself doesn't cause the confusion, because someone had said, Mars in retrograde is confusion. I said, no, it's the aspect to Neptune that would create that kind of, that's not its deal. Mars is, you could have repressed anger in a retrograde.
Right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But anyway, I thought that it's one of the interesting things about that relationship between Neptune and Mars. But I definitely feel like I agree with all the what's really going on. There's this drama that's being in the media that's even maybe worse than normal, though it's been pretty bad.
Yeah, and you're right though. Mars is very direct energy, but it is in retrograde and then square to Neptune. Neptune is very indirect energy.
Yes,
Well, that's passive aggressive.
Well, and that's why I called it weapons of mass delusion, because Mars is Mars just likes to make weapons out of everything. Right? Everything, and so it's in Gemini.
And in Gemini, it's going to use your words against you.
It's weaponizing of the story of the media.
Of the news, media.
The media is being so weaponized. It's kind of
and social media is a huge weapon. Yeah. Look at I don't want to get too much into the Twitter stuff because it's so insane, but that is such Mars and Gemini. It's so that.
And it's all coming crashing down because it's all, nobody, it's kind of like everybody.
Evil egomaniac.
We are all in a hall of mirrors. Yeah. Nobody knows it's really.
I did want to say something historical, but the last time that Mars was in Gemini completely, not going backwards into Cancer, was October 28th, 1943. And January 10th, 1944, and ABC began broadcasting. I thought there was, and I knew there'd be something technologically going on historically, and so maybe the Twitter thing is somehow related because, obviously it's got other planets, but I just thought, I try to look for a repetition of themes like astrologers do. I said, well, there could be something with technology now, with Mars and Gemini and retrograde. So I just thought that was kind of cool. Synchronicity or historical aspect of Mars and Gemini.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about that as beginning of the technopocalypse. because that's what a lot of astrologers are calling Pluto going into Aquarius,
Right.
which is for the first time in March 2023. And I was thinking, as they're talking about how tech is just what's happening at Facebook, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And the big tech is they're just starting to spin out.
Right.
And it's like, I do think this is the beginning of,
Yeah.
this is the foreshadowing of what's coming in like March. Like, I think it's going to be madness.
Right. And there's so many like tech companies that are like, oh, well, Twitter's going off the rails, so let's start up Tribal or Blue Sky. There's all these other people that are like trying to come up with the next big social media thing so that people can jump ship from, whatever.
And they might be able to, actually,
or
because
the metaverse or whatever.
Mars is also will. I've been studying what Mars is, and it's your willpower. And you can evidently, according to one astrologer, you can redirect your will during a Mars retrograde. You can take it and see where you want to place it more. So I love that idea of smaller companies thinking about that now, because I think that's possible, really.
Right.
It'd be helpful for sure.
And I think with it being in retrograde too, there could be a lot still going on that we can't see it yet, but maybe once Mars goes direct, we will.
And remember, Pluto and Mars are both about power.
Right.
It's power. And Pluto is sheer power. So right now, big tech has a little too much power for their britches.
Right.
They got a little big for their britches here.
No kidding.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
And so, so they're kind of imploding. So we'll see. And
Right, because we have these huge, they're just like these like ridiculous evil overlords that are like, what?
I know they're
I
very,
own everything.
Yes, they
Everything's
do.
Musk and Zuckerberg, just owning everything.
And so and we have the Aquarius is the people.
Yeah.
Right.
And the Aquarian ideal, Aquarius, they're not real crazy about the rich being.
No, because they're like, it doesn't benefit the group.
Yeah.
Right.
When it stopped, the social media is about forming these little groups, and when it's like, when you can no longer benefit your community and your group, that's not an ideal that's going to work for Aquarius.
Right.
Good point. Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to seeing what happens
Aquarius
there.
is like, you know what? I'm sorry you broke your leg. We're going to leave you behind. We got to think of the group. Sorry.
That's right.
We're not all lovey-dovey.
No, definitely not.
Right.
It's not like, yay, love humanity. It's like, no, sorry, you're holding us back. Go.
Yeah, it can be very ruthless.
Can be ruthless.
But remember,
Yeah, it can be.
Pluto's going to make it very
ruthless.
ruthless.
Yeah.
And it will be. So with all of that energy going towards, Pluto in Aquarius and a 20-year age of, technology, breakthroughs and awakenings and, revolutions and all that. So we're sitting right on the precipice of it. We're sitting at that really, that degree. There's a bunch of stuff I want to talk about today, but I don't know if we're going to have time to get to them. I did want to talk about the Hammer of the Gods because
Okay.
Go for it.
The Hammer of the Gods.
See if you can figure out what my notes were, Marnie.
Nancy Pelosi, March 26, 1940, Uranus return, Uranus at 19 Taurus. Oh, that's right. So she's having her Uranus return, coincides with the Uranus return of the start of World War II.
Yes.
Pluto and Leo square Saturn and Taurus. I do have Nancy's chart.
Is this related to her husband's
Yes,
attack?
the reason I wanted to bring that up because
horrific.
And it was just. I remember when I was watching the news, and I heard, about, her husband getting hit in the head with a hammer. I thought of something. I was like, oh my God, I remember years ago looking at her chart and seeing that she had Mars in Taurus at 25 degrees conjunct Al Ghul. And Al Ghul is, the Medusa's head in astrology. It's a fixed star.
Right.
And it's called the demon star. And it's all about, basically that, the head of Medusa and traditional astrology can be very dark,
right.
But it's also
rules over like beheadings.
Rules, but beheadings.
That is dark.
The Chinese have a name for the star. They call it corpses building up. And in World War II,
that's very dramatic, China. Thank you.
Well, in World War II, Uranus was in Taurus and eventually hit that point at 26 degrees, and that was like
talk about
23 million
corpses were building up.
Yes, they did.
Everywhere.
They did. So I had noticed that years ago that she had, and I thought that's interesting because she's so intense. I'm like, oh, she's got Mars. And then when I saw that news story, I'm like, wait a minute, her husband got hit in the head by a hammer. She has Mars conjunct Ghul. Exactly. So I started looking it up, and it brought up all these really fascinating issues and ideas about the time she was born. Nancy Pelosi is having her Uranus return. Most of us don't live to see that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. 84, is it 82, 84?
Between 82 and 84 years.
Right.
And the thing is that when she was born, the very beginning of World War II. So her planets, all of her planets, are pretty much the same chart as the beginning of World War II. So we are at the Uranus return of World War II, and Uranus was at 19 degrees Taurus at the start of World War II, and we're right there. Wow. And Jupiter was in Aries, and Jupiter's going in Aries. And whenever Jupiter goes into Aries, that's, I don't want to be, too dark, but that can bring big actions,
Big conflict,
conflict,
big war, big war.
So that's really interesting to me that she's here now with the same aspects, very similar and the stuff that was happening building up to World War II, because we are having those aspects, and that's just, that's, I don't want to, be really dark and,
Well,
negative.
no, that there's a parallel though with the buildup of fascism around the world.
Exactly.
So it isn't just the U.S. that's going through these problems. We were talking about, Michael and I, that fascism is on the rise throughout the world, and so again, that was what was going on
and that
during
was the
that
Uranus
time, right?
Pluto. They had the Uranus Pluto conjunction. She's got it on her chart. Check out that Uranus Pluto conjunction.
So I think it's important to actually notice that.
Well, her Uranus is the 19 degrees Taurus, but her Pluto's at 0 degrees Leo.
Oh no, it's Jupiter.
Her Jupiter's at 17 Aries. Her Mars 26 Taurus. Venus 20 Taurus.
What is the Pluto? What is one of the outer
Pluto?
planets?
According to this chart, now I looked this up online. It says her birth time's 3:10 p.m. and that puts her Pluto at 0 degrees Leo. According to this, she has Moon in Scorpio at 18 degrees.
Right.
So she's kind of getting nailed too.
Oh, Pluto square Saturn. Sorry. So look at that 0 point. Saturn is in Taurus, right? Is it Saturn in Taurus?
For Saturn?
Yeah, Saturn in Taurus.
Saturn's at 0
Pluto
degrees
in
Taurus.
Leo.
Pluto's at 0 degrees Leo. So that's exactly square on that. That was the beginning of World War II. That's a really intense square, right? And then Uranus is coming, is in there. So that's very much the rise of
Pluto's very much a dictator.
The Pluto Saturn is, and we just had all those Uranus Pluto squares we had 7 of them, in the early in 2010. So,
but Nancy was one of the few people standing up to Trump. Like, remember how she was such a hero during that time where she was outspoken?
Yeah,
and
she's kind of
a tough lady.
She's a Scorpio with Moon in Aries.
She's an Aries with Moon in Scorpio. Yeah,
flipped it. Sorry, dyslexia.
Aries with Moon in Scorpio.
Aries with Moon in Scorpio and Mars in Taurus conjunct Al Ghul. And yes, she is a warrior. She's got a planet of a warrior.
Yeah, Venus in Taurus, Saturn in Taurus, Uranus in Taurus. She's not.
She was born in the same basic chart as World War II. This woman is a fighter, and so it's really interesting to me that at this moment in time, her husband gets hit on the head with a hammer. It was horrible. It's like called the hammer of the gods. It's like this, but I do think this must be very. She's also getting, I think, a Neptune return too.
It's the second time that publicly we've all known someone gone after her specifically.
Right.
So January 6th, she was named as someone they were they were looking for her.
Yeah.
And
and it's interesting that phrase kept coming up, the "Where's Nancy?" It happened on January 6th. It happened when they broke into her house. It's like, "Where's Nancy?" It's so creepy.
It is really
It reminds me
creepy.
of The Shining,
But I think the fact that she's so fearless and she's so, she's such a fighter, but I think that could be her Achilles heel, her weak spot, the male Mars, and that's her husband. And I think I really do think this has shaken her up. Like this probably, this really kind of, and it's her Uranus return and Neptune return, and it's kind of like, I think she might be having a crisis, bring on a crisis about if she's doing, she really wants to continue forward. And she may have brought that up, I don't know, but so I think, but I also think it's very much tied in the energy of the rise of fascism and and the fact that she has stood for 84 years and lived through this whole this whole transit of Uranus, and it's all back to where it was, and where everyone's buzzing about the rise of fascism and Nazism, and I just think it's really crazy. I just wanted to bring it
she's
up.
definitely got an interesting chart. She's got Mercury in Pisces. That's interesting.
Yeah, she does have a very
she can be diplomatic and then she sometimes isn't. Sometimes she says stuff that I'm like, Nancy, no. But
She has to, and she's
Yeah.
in a man's world. You
Yeah.
know, it's like it's crazy. So that that ruthlessness is, I think, that Mars in the goal. But I do think the Neptune Pisces stuff is kind of messing with her.
well, so what do you think? We have time for one more of these little topics here.
Yeah,
What time is it?
definitely.
15
We got-
o'clock.
15 o'clock.
You got plenty of time.
Oh, we have 15
We
minutes.
have so get in losers.
I want to
Receiving
know what
democracy,
this is. Hold my latte. I'm going to make a bold prediction.
Oh, hold my latte.
Hold my latte.
Hold my latte. I'm going to make a big prediction. Well, I was, because I'm one of those latte drinking, woke liberals, lefty.
Can I get you an
feminazis.
avocado toast?
Yeah, sweet. I'll take that. You can hold my avocado
What are your
toast.
pronouns?
Okay, so should I make my big bold predictions for, after all of that?
After all of
Blah,
that,
blah.
what are we predicting, or what are you predicting?
Okay,
I'm not
do you
predicting
have, you
anything.
didn't bring a prediction? I have to make a bold prediction?
You want me to make one?
No,
About
did
what?
you bring a bold? Do you
I
have
did
a-
not bring one, but you know what? If I feel one come on, believe me, I'll say it. I'll be like, oh, feel a bold
Are we ready
prediction.
for
Feel
that?
a bold prediction
Okay,
coming on.
let's see what else. We'll save that for last. That'll be the big. That's
All
the
right.
cliffhanger. Maybe people, all y'all fans out there will hang out to the very end. Prediction.
All right. What about this one? I fought the law and the law won.
Oh yeah, okay, got that.
That one's
Cue the music, Marnie.
I like that one.
What is the music? Mars.
I fought the law and-
Well, no, I know that music, but I think that's copyright infringement.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
No, it's fair use. I think you just did like 5 seconds. You're
Okay.
So Mars square Neptune. Oh, this is the Mars square Neptune. Sun enters Sag new moon, Jupiter direct, square Neptune Mars. I'm sure these mean something to you. Sexy lady judge. What? I'm sorry.
see, that's
I predict a sexy lady judge.
well,
What's happening?
because I think that's the the Venus and Pluto sextile. I thought that was kind of sexy.
Oh, okay.
And the reason that's in there from the prediction is because I think that also has to go with the fall of the Orange Antichrist.
Oh, those
So,
go together.
Oh
really-
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, sexy lady judge squares off against the Antichrist. This is Mars square Neptune. So we've got a lot of Mars square
The
Neptune.
reason that's in
things.
there is,
and that's going to nail the
Orange Antichrist.
orange Antichrist.
Well, the
or
thing is, the Orange Antichrist.
satanic dreamsicle, whatever he
Yes,
is.
satanic.
like that.
We have a lot of names.
He has a lot of names.
Too many names. They shan't be named. He has his sun in Gemini. Of course, now
Right.
it's at 20. It's at 22 degrees.
Oh, good.
Right. Good. So it's getting squared. His sun's been getting
nailed.
squared by Neptune since the election. So because Neptune's been at 22, but he was born on an eclipse. He was born on a Gemini Sagittarius eclipse. So he's got his sun is in Gemini, his moon is in Sagittarius, and they were eclipsing at like within 1 or 2 minutes.
Wow.
At that moment, so so it's very see like that's very much the king.
Very
Right.
The,
The king.
big lie, alternative
All right.
facts,
All of it.
like all
So
that,
now Neptune has come along and squared his sun, and when it happened, that was during the election. That's why I predicted. I was like, oh, he's going to lose and his ego is so damn big. When anyone has a Neptune Sun square, it's pretty much. I mean, ego death might be a little dramatic, but it breaks down the ego, right? And he lost an election, right? So the ego is broken down, and it's still now it's applying even harder because the Neptune is like it's right on top of it, and Mars is on top of it too. And Mars is always the trigger, right?
Right.
Whenever you're trying to predict something, find Mars,
Right.
And Mars will tell you this is Mars takes action. Mars will take
yeah.
action. So with Mars squaring Neptune, and it's on his solar eclipse axis exactly.
Right.
And it's November 19th is the next Mars square Neptune, right? So November 19th, Mars is going to square Neptune, trigger point, right? I'm like, oh God, okay, we don't even know where we're going to be at then. But that sits right on top of his stuff, which is really interesting because that's when he said he was going to announce his bid for the presidency or the candidacy for the
Right.
primary for the Republicans. And it's
Right.
like right on that week. But remember, Sagittarius, this moon coming up, this big moon, Sagittarius moon. Sagittarius is the law. We forget about that sometimes.
Yeah.
It's
the law, the justice system.
It's the law and the justice system, and
it's the law
true.
philosophically too,
It's
just like the idea of law,
right?
Yeah, law and order.
And that full moon it squares all of that. It starts on the 19th, and it just kind of is, it just implodes. And I don't even know. It looks to me like it's a complete. He's just. It's a
Do you think he could go to prison?
I think the law, well, it says right here, or sexy.
Where's the sexy lady judge? Is she going to send him to
the reason I
prison?
said sexy lady judge, that was a note for myself. I would never have said that out loud.
Right.
But because I was actually thinking about, because we're talking about Sagittarius, and Stacey Abrams is the Sagittarius, right?
Oh.
So she brings that kind of energy, right? And so and also these judges, and not only judges but prosecutors that are after him, like Fani Willis and Letitia James, and there are these beautiful black women who are they've got the law. They're the law.
Right. They're like, oh, you want me to play by those rules? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to outplay you now.
So I think that it's all going to kind of crash down on him, and it'll probably be somewhere on the 19th. I think it might be when he announces his whatever, and most likely, I mean, I'll make a prediction right now. If Santos wins, I mean, this is just dirty politics talk, but Santos wins, which most likely it probably will, that's going to set up this thing with him, and
right,
that's going to play out, and that makes sense to me because that fear of losing. That Neptune, his ego has been so like, what I mean? Like some people can lose the game and just go home, but when you have Neptune also crushing you internally, and crushing the ego,
it's going to dissolve your ego.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting, and I think that's how that's going to play out.
And a narcissist cannot deal with that ego dissolution at all.
Yes, thank you, Marnie. The narcissist coming up against someone that he knows. Everyone's gonna, you know what I mean? If people turn on, if he feels like he's losing his, his power, his adulation, his narcissism, because he's going to look at Santos, because that's very clearly happening. I mean, we all know that's coming. Santos is.
DeSantis is up next, and he scares me even more because Trump is old and he's pretty. I think he's going to be on the way out, but you cut off the head and 6 more grow. So
but I do think
that's true.
And I do think well, that's a whole nother story. But that's why trying to game this out with the astrology. That's what I've gamed out. That's what I think is probably going to happen there. I think, and I think the law is going to come down on him. Especially.
But also, the U.S. chart has Sagittarius rising, so that's kind of interesting.
That's right.
I'm hoping that the tension on Trump means he could get in trouble. Like, I mean, I think so. I hope that he's not safe, that he's delusional about that he won't.
Right, and the 19th. Well, his delusions. I think it's going to be even more horrible from the law. That's one thing, but. Losing
the blow to his ego.
The ego. If he's got somebody that people might like better than him.
Right.
That I think that will probably destroy him more than all the sexy lady judges.
It's a good point.
Right, exactly.
That's what I think.
What? There's some white guy that people like better than me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that I'm gaming that out that way. It could go.
I mean, he's going to have. He already has legal troubles. We know. I mean, he does have legal troubles. That is happening, and that is not going to go away. And I think the biggest fear, of course, is that if Republicans take over everything, that a lot of that will start to go away. But there's only so much they can do.
Right.
So.
All right. So where are we? We have 7 minutes left. So the countdown to.
Yes. What was the bold prediction you were going to
make?
When
the women. Oh, this one. This one, we don't probably have a lot of time for this. You want to try reading that? It's kind of fun when you read my notes.
Well, when I try to interpret what's happening.
Oh, this was. Here, just read it. And then I can
when government gets religious, women get screwed.
Right.
The Day of Rage. Is this going back to the Iranian?
Yeah, I didn't mean to go back to that, but I think there's something, and this is a whole nother episode we have to do about zero Aries point. And know about zero Aries point. Mm-hmm. That's what that's all about. And we don't have the time.
The Arab Spring. Yeah, we went. Yeah, we went off on this for a long time. But yeah, it's a lot.
The idea of when government get religious, women get screwed, and that's the idea of behind the religious right and the rise of the religious right. Mm-hmm. That's basically what.
Right. It's always women who pay the price.
Well, especially because it's a religious. they've made a woman's body's part of the
Right.
religion.
Because
Control.
religion is patriarchal, and that's just how it's worked out.
Oh, this one I stole from Knock LA. Get in, losers. We're salvaging democracy. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
February 18th, transiting Pluto. Ooh, it's all there.
All right. Well, we only got 5 minutes. You have any bold predictions for the rest?
Oh, okay.
We're,
Hold my latte.
we're waiting for the
Hold my latte. Okay. Oh, Marnie, you can read my
What is this?
my predictions. Let Marnie read the predictions.
Democrats gain
Then you can
seats.
blame her when it's wrong.
Democrats gain seats. Republicans go nuclear with weapons of mass delusion. That's a good prediction. I
That's
mean,
what I'm thinking.
I would think that Mars square Neptune energy. That's gonna be a lot of.
Right.
Yeah. We're going to war.
Well, so, I do think that's how I'm getting it out. That's because Uranus is in there. I do think.
So the Democrats gain seats. Is that the House? Is that the Senate? What is the?
They gain more power. So however that works out. I'm
Okay.
just looking at astrology, they get the balance of power doesn't really. I don't think it goes too crazy one way or the other.
Right.
But they don't lose all the seats, and it's all a red mirage. But the thing is they know this. They're counting on the red mirage.
Right.
I mean,
The Republicans have set up this guarantee. If Democrats win, it's
Right.
because they cheated, and if Republicans win, it's because there was no cheating.
Right.
And so either way, they will feel vindicated
Because of the
we
price of
won,
gas,
or because you cheated, and that's the
Right,
only reason you
right.
won. So they've set it up.
Well, it's
this
all a
way
setup.
on
It's
purpose.
all a setup.
We've been set up, and now we're just like sitting here,
Right.
We know we're set up. We're in the car with the mafioso guy that's like, hey, you want to go grab some pasta? And then you halfway through the ride, you're like, he's going to shoot me in the head, and it's too late now. I got sucked into the idea of garlic bread, and now I'm going to be swimming with the fishes.
That's your prediction, Marnie. I love it. That's awesome.
Well, Michael pointed something out in was it California or some states? Republicans, when they were campaigning, did not put they were Republican on some of their ads. They hid it. They didn't want people to know they were Republican. And
see, they're sneaky.
They're like, oh, I'm independent. No, you're a Republican.
Right.
Or even,
So,
in
that's-
LA, Caruso running for mayor. He's a Republican, but
Right.
he pretends to be a Democrat
does,
so
I
that he
know.
can win.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So it is a lot of mass illusion. We have to deal with that. But the thing is, though, that I think we're not going to, tonight, we're not going to go home and go get our popcorn and go, oh, who won? Because it's going to be a fuzzy mess because Mercury, Uranus, that's
Right.
in the 2020 we had the Mercury square Saturn. We had Mercury square Saturn too. We didn't even talk about that. Right. Mercury squaring Saturn too. So we had that in 2020, and that happens at the end of the day actually today. Mercury
so
square Saturn.
a quick one about LA. Do you think Karen Bass is going to beat Rick Caruso?
Oh, that's a good question. I started to
I didn't even
look at that. I would say I'd say yeah, but that's my personal kind of vibe. But I haven't dug down in the
I
astrology
haven't
on that
either.
one.
I've been kind of afraid too because I'm very afraid of him and how much he's manipulated people with his
His
ad
ads.
campaigns.
Oh,
And
I know.
all of his ad campaigns are like, "Hi, I'm a black woman," and "Hola,
Right.
me llamo the fire department," and he's purposely tried to show how woke he is, and it's so transparent, and people are falling for it.
Say that last one again. Miyamo Fire Department. My name is Fire Department.
No, it was really bad. But that's what it felt like. It's like he's this total white guy that's trying to, get all of these, diverse people to come in and, do bilingual ads and talk about how pro-choice he is. And it's just it's completely transparent.
Yeah, I saw that too. It made me mad as well.
It's disgusting.
But remember, California is so slow on counting votes. We're not going to know until probably 2028.
So we will have fallen into the ocean. It's
So what's gonna when we go
mayor.
when we go home tonight and we turn on our TV and it's all gonna be there's gonna be the red mirage, there's gonna be red waves, there's gonna be all kinds of crazy shit. Don't believe any of it. I mean, we say that with the Mercury stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Because Mercury and Uranus are doing their little thing, and they're backstage, but they'll come out and and fight it out. But right now, at least, and remember in December 6th, that's when a lot of the runoffs will happen. right?
Right.
So we're probably going to have runoffs in like Georgia.
And we're going to have another full moon at 16
Right.
degrees again. And
Right.
so
So-
there's going to be a cycle.
Right. This isn't just election day; it's like election month, and that's
Good point.
yeah.
Yeah.
And because in the moons too, we go from this crazy Taurus Scorpio scary ass moon to the Sag Gemini sexy lawyer and
Right. But also truth and lies.
truth and life. Yeah, but things will be more out in the open. We'll know more. We're not going to know for probably, especially Neptune square Mars and Jupiter. Like we're not going to know, and it's going to be chaos. So everyone just be cool, drink your lattes, and eat avocado
right.
toast.
Wrapped
and-
up.
Hang in there, folks. Thank
Hang
you
in
both
there.
for a wonderful discussion.
That
Thank you
was
coming
fun.
back. Really enjoyed it. And I hope you all have a good election day, those in the United States. And stay tuned. Join us next time as we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure together.
Make lattes, not war.